All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Aspel. I'm Deputy Executive Officer with the Engineering and Permitting Department here at South Coast AQMD. Good to see everyone in person, and thank you for those joining online. I'm going to start with our housekeeping comments, but thank you for participating in our hybrid meeting for the South Coast AQMD BACT Scientific Review Committee. It's been a minute, but we have three formats for participation: in person, the Zoom app, and teleconference. Please silence your other communication devices to prevent disruptions during the meeting. In-person attendees must not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the meeting room. All participants on Zoom, except for Scientific Review Committee members and South Coast AQMD staff, will be placed on mute by the host. You will not be able to mute or unmute your line manually. After each agenda item, public comment will be taken. For those of you in the room, you will be called when it is your turn to speak. For those on Zoom, if you would like to make public comment on the Zoom screen, please click the raise hand button. For those calling in by phone, you can dial *9 to signal that you would like to comment. Your name or part of your phone number will be called when it is your turn to comment, and the host will unmute your line automatically. We wish to promote open dialogue in this meeting. If necessary, due to time constraints, speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes for all items on the agenda, or 3 minutes or less for public comment. The meeting chair may provide a shorter length of time depending on the number of requests to speak received to allow everyone an opportunity to be heard. That is not our intent. Hopefully, we can move along the meeting and keep things going. Please note you can hang up or leave the Zoom meeting at any time. Please treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being dropped from the meeting. Lastly, please be aware that this video conference is being recorded. By participating in this meeting hosted by South Coast AQMD, you agree to authorize recording of audio and visual content presented during this live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in public domain by South Coast AQMD. For our in-person attendees, in the event of emergency, if we need to evacuate, there are exits on both sides of the room. If that is the case, please follow staff and make your way to the parking lot. Also, for those that need to use the restroom, they are through the back of the room, through the double doors to the left. With that, bring the meeting. That concludes our housekeeping remarks. We'll bring the meeting to order. First, I do want to check in with our remote locations. First, from our CARB location, do you have anyone from the public attending your location?
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And then for our EPA location, Nydia, do we have anybody attending from the public up there?
No one from the public.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. With that, we'll do brief staff introductions for South Coast AQMD before we go into roll call. Again, I'm Jason Aspel, Deputy Executive Officer.
Jillian Wong, Assistant Deputy.
Mike Morris, Planning and Rules Manager. Brian Tomasovic, Assistant Chief Deputy Counsel.
Bhaskar Chandan, Permitting Manager.
Arif Farahani, Program Supervisor.
Bettina Burley Sanchez, Senior Air Quality Engineer.
All right, and with that, let's jump into a roll call for our SRC members.
I'm going to read the organization name, and if whoever's here, please tell me your name. California Air Resources Board, I already know Paul is here, and USA EPA Region 9, we know Nydia is here, so you don't have to read your names. San Diego County Air Pollution Control District.
Mohsen Nazemi, Chief Engineering.
Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District.
David Harris, Engineering Manager.
Los Angeles County Sanitation District.
Larissa Nizawa, Division Engineer.
Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Absent. Orange County Sanitation District. Absent. Southern California Edison. Absent. Southern California Gas. Hadley Nolan. Yep. California Alliance of Small Business Associations.
There's a place for the gas company right over here. I don't think it's your name, but you're welcome to sit here.
Rad Tech International.
Breda Loof, Director of Environmental Affairs.
Western States Petroleum Association. Absent. See, we have an arrival of Orange County Sanitation District.
That's right. Good morning, everyone. Rhonda Bushbon, Orange County Sanitation District.
University of California, Riverside. Absence. University of Southern California.
Jiachen Zhang. Thank you.
Foul Weather Consulting. Absence. Montrose Environmental Solutions.
Carl Laney.
Ship and Shore Environmental. Absent. And York Engineering.
Judy York, York Engineering.
Thank you.
And I just meant to state, we are aware some of our members are listening in from non-noticed locations. So that is why we're not bringing them over on participants. You can listen in, but not comment as a SRC member due to Brown Act requirements. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. All right. First off, we sent out the minutes from our last meeting, which was last year. Actually, subsequent to that, we did go to our board to adopt the BACT guidelines that were being proposed at that time. I just wanted to give everyone a moment. Was there any comments on those minutes that we sent out?
Yeah, Jason?
Yes, Bill.
Yeah, the minutes that I downloaded were dated July 25th, 2023. That's not last year, but is that the last time that we met?
You're right, Bill. After that, we had the Station Resource Committee in 2024, and then we went to the governing board to get the approval on the package. That was before those two meetings.
Okay, so these are the latest minutes then?
That's the latest
Oh,
minutes, right before getting the approval in 2024.
They look strange to me again, but that's passage of time, so.
Yeah, it's, looking back on it, the focus of our conversation a lot was the source test procedures on the Tier 4 engines that took up a lot of the time, although discussed as part of the BACT process, not integral. So we had some added discussions there as well in permit streamlining task force as well. So, all right. Seeing no comments on that, or no other comments, we'll move on. Again, welcome everybody. Appreciate everyone coming out again. Looking as we move forward for this next round of BACT updates, before we proceeded into the detailed discussion, the determinations, everything we normally present, we realized we had a lot of new BACT SRC members coming on board. So we wanted to take a step back and, again, I think probably good practice even with experienced BACT SRC members to go over, lay out the landscape of what we're doing here with what we're doing with the South Coast AQMD BACT program, the why we have the scientific review committee, what this whole process looks like before we jump into the next meeting where we start discussing those determinations. So we know how to frame that discussion and where we're going with all of that. So what we want to do today is, promote discussion, feel free to ask questions. We're under, the Brown Act umbrella. I'll probably pause here and there to open it up for public discussion, and again, at the end of the agenda items as well, but we'll kind of feel out how the flow of the meeting is going. But again, for all of you here, if you're at the table, signal you wish to speak at any point, and those attendees, we do have a handheld mic. I'll be checking periodically. Just raise your hand if you have any questions. And with that, I will hand off and we'll get started on our presentation. Bettina's going to take us through the first few slides. And I did meant to add, CARB is going to be presenting some of their recent efforts as well for the clearinghouse as our second item. So thank you for that. But Bettina, with that, take it away.
Thank you, Jason. First of all, I just want to say thank you for joining us, everyone. Our returning members, we really appreciate your continued commitment and expertise. And our new members, welcome aboard. We're really excited to see your contributions and much needed. And our former members, all former members, we wanted to extend our sincere appreciation and thanks for your past service. Here's the outline of what we're going to be going over today. BACT applicability and criteria. New source review performed during the permit process is a set of pre-construction review requirements for new, modified, or relocated sources. The type of review seeks to make sure that the operation of these sources does not interfere with the attainment of the national ambient air quality standards. The specific goal of the NSR regulation is that there are no net increases from new or modified permitted sources of non-attainment air contaminants or their precursors, as well as to limit the emission increases of ammonia and ozone depleting compounds by requiring the use of the best available control technology. A list, sorry, I realized I had my camera off there. A list of ozone depleting compounds can be found on Table 2 of the BACT guidelines overview section. If the NSR analysis shows that there's an increase of emissions greater than or equal to 1 pound per day of cumulative increases over a 5-year period, then the implementation of the best available control technology will be required. BACT is the most stringent emission limitation or control technique for a class and category of equipment that is contained in a state implementation plan approved by the EPA or determined to be technologically feasible and cost-effective. If something is achieved in practice, then it may be implied that this equipment is economic and cost-effective. The BACT guidelines include both major sources and minor sources, and for each of these, there's a policy and procedures section as well as an equipment determination section. Periodic updates to the BACT guidelines reflect advancements in technology and ensure the use of the cleanest technologies. And these updates reflect technical feasibility and are generally published based on the class and category of a source, such as an engine, a boiler, or a spray booth. Structure and facility types. South Coast AQMD Rule 1302 defines emission thresholds for facilities to be considered a major source facility. If a threshold for any one criteria pollutant is equaled or exceeded, the facility is a major polluting facility. If a threshold is not exceeded, then the facility is considered to be a non-major polluting facility. For major polluting facilities, BACT is referred to as LAIR, which is the lowest achievable emission rate. Major polluting facilities are subject to additional stringencies due to federal regulations. Cost considerations are not applied, and the limits are based on information at the time the permit to construct is issued. Non-major polluting facilities are smaller and covered under California Health and Safety Code. Non-major BACT determinations require cost-effectiveness considerations and are made at the time the permit application is deemed complete. Each section of the BACT guidelines contains two parts. Parts A and B apply to major polluting facilities. Parts C and D apply to non-major polluting facilities. And parts E and F apply to the prevention of significant deterioration based on greenhouse gases. The first part of each section is a policy section, and the second part is a determination section where specific BACT or layer determinations are listed. BACT guideline update and history process. First published in 1983, there were major revisions in 1988, 1995, 1998. In the year 2000, the minor source section of the BACT determinations were adopted into the guideline. In 2016, parts E and F were added to address the prevention of significant deterioration requirements for greenhouse gases. These guidelines are subjected to an ongoing effort of updates based on technology advancements. New BACT determination and guideline updates are subject to public notification requirements and are discussed with the BACT Scientific Review Committee, a committee established by the South Coast AQMD to review and comment on the technical matters of these proposals. The process of updating the BACT guidelines is illustrated here in the diagram on the right. The BACT team will notify the Scientific Review Committee and the public about new listings and updates. The SRC and the public will comment on the changes and provide their input on the proposed guideline and procedure changes to assist staff with these changes. On a periodic basis, staff will present the finalized proposed changes to the governing board. Scientific Review
Bettina,
Committee.
I have a question
Sure.
on that slide. Basically on the advisory group format. So the SRC advises staff rather than advising a committee like the Local Government Small Business Assistance Committee that advises an administrative committee or goes through that process. So the BACT SRC advice goes to staff, is an advisory committee to staff, correct? According to the charter.
Yes, regarding the back process and the proposed determinations, correct.
Thank you. SRC introduction. The Scientific Review Committee was established in 1995 based on an initiative to update the BACT guidelines at the time. The purpose of this standing committee was to provide comments and contribute knowledge in order to assist staff with BACT guideline updates, determinations, procedures, and methodologies. The BACT SRC charter is available on our website, and we encourage everyone to take a look at that document, which does describe the BACT SRC. Mission and goals. The mission and goals of the SRC are to assist the South Coast AQMD staff with BACT guideline developments to ensure that it's clear, consistent, and technologically sound. Contribute to the public process, provide technical expertise, and to give advice on the BACT determination process. Key objectives. Through periodic meetings during times that the BACT guidelines are under development, the BACT SRC achieves its goals using written and verbal comments that share technical knowledge and encourage discussions, as well as helping to be sure that our BACT guidelines do align with federal, state, and local requirements. SRC membership structure. There are up to 19 members on the Scientific Review Committee at one time. These members are technical, scientific air quality professionals. The term of membership is 2 years with reappointments available. Executive officer approved alternates are also encouraged. However, others who are not officially identified as alternates are always able to participate in the meetings and comment during public portions of the meetings. We're always open to adding people to our list of BACT SRC members and alternates. Currently, we're seeking additional members from the academic institution category. So please let us know if you're interested in becoming a BACT SRC member so that we can add you to our list of interested parties. Public meetings. BACT SRC meetings are public meetings held periodically at times when the BACT guidelines are being updated. These meetings are governed by the Brown Act, requiring availability to the public and require completion of the AB 1234 ethics training for all committee members. New BACT listings will be sent to SRC members in advance of all SRC meetings where updates to the guidelines are presented. And for clarity, there are no proposed listings or updates being introduced at this meeting, so there were no listings or updates sent out in advance. When proposed, amendments to the BACT guidelines will require a 30-day public comment period, followed by a final BACT SRC meeting. Finalized updates will then be reported to the South Coast AQMD Stationary Source Committee and the South Coast AQMD Governing Board. Final BACT guideline adoption occurs only after this public review and feedback process is completed.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just recently took the ethics training, AB 1234 for another group. That applies to all of them though, right? I mean, I don't have to do that for every group or every committee that I'm on.
That's correct. I believe you submitted your,
Last year.
yeah, and so those are good for 2 years, I believe. So as long as you take it, yeah, as long as it's 2 hours long.
It applies to all of them though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if anyone has questions on that, if they have taken it previously, just send us the information. We'll check with council.
Public participation and reporting. All BACT SR meetings are open to the public. If teleconference locations are implemented, they must be accessible to the public, including to the disabled and identified in the notices and agenda. The agenda must be posted at all teleconference locations, and members of the public must be able to hear the meeting and to testify from each location. The public will be provided with the opportunity to comment on proposed BACT guideline updates. Prior permitting decisions will not be discussed in SRC meetings unless they are relevant to current guideline updates. I'm now going to hand the presentation over to Bahare to talk about the update process.
Good morning, everyone, again. And thank you, Bettina, for a helpful overview of the BACT guidelines and the role of the BACT SRC. So I'm going to kind of build on that by walking you through the BACT update process and how we go through the public process to finalize our BACT determinations. And then I will provide you with some also information about the cost effectiveness evaluation and the next steps in the process. And after that, I will hand off to Carp, talking about the clearinghouse, which is part of the, excuse me. Sorry, I was asked to put my camera on. So now you have to see me very closely. Okay, so I wanted to start with two different processes that we have to update our BACT determination update. And as Bettina explained, the two main definition of the BACT requirements, which are has been achieved in practice or being in the EPA-approved state implementation plan or the rule of the air districts are coming from the federal law. So they are the requirement of the federal regulation, and they apply to the major polluting facilities. For this part of the determination, as you saw in the structure of the BACT guidelines, we do have one part, which is part B of the guideline. But when we go to part B of the guideline, it has different sections, and we notice that sometimes, since people are not very familiar with this section, they may not look at section 2, which is also important. So I wanted to give you some overview about the difference between these 3 sections. So section 1 pretty much is based on the BACT determination has been done in the South Coast with our permit engineer. So these are the permits has been issued in the South Coast Air Quality Management District. The section 2 also count as BACT determination for major polluting facilities, but these are pretty much comprised of the other air districts BACT determinations and requirements, and we are trying to have them there to make it clear and be more consistent. And then section 3 doesn't count as BACT. We are listing other technologies there, and we are trying to update this page right now. And these are some of the permits has been issued, but they are not probably achieving practice. They haven't been source tested, so they are not still ready to be count as BACT. So, but we want to give some idea or have it kind of transparent for the people that it could be BACT in the future. And when it goes to the update process, section 2, as I mentioned, it is from other air districts, so we are not going to do the public process on this section. What we are going to do in terms of the update and provide notification to the public goes to our section 1, which is our BACT determinations. And you see the steps here. So pretty much we are going to notify the public and also the BACT SRC about any about any BACT determination we are going to propose or any permit we are going to issue, and we will provide you with the 30-day public comments. Do you have a question?
Yes,
ahead.
thank you. Bahare, on section 2, are there any layer determinations coming from the EPA? What is the communication like? Does the EPA ever reach out to you guys to inform you of new layer updates, or do you hear from other air districts? What's the
For section
process?
2 of the guidelines, usually we are approaching to other air districts. Also, right now we are working with CARB, and Paul will give you some overview about their new platforms, technology clearinghouse. So this is also a place that we will be informed that if there is any new BACT determination. But since this is in progress right now, also we are reaching out to the neighboring air quality districts, or if we heard from other permit engineers. So there is some, interaction with other air districts and sometimes with CARB to get this information. But all of us pretty much, we provide our BACT determination to the CARB. So they will pretty much compile all of them in their centralized system.
And let me add to that too, just as a reminder for the Title V process, a lot of these have to go through EPA for review and comment, approval before they're issued. So if they did identify anything where layer was not being met, they would have that opportunity to comment. But again, I think they do their own permitting in other jurisdictions, but I think all the air districts, EPA, CARB is all responsible for feeding into and populating the clearinghouses. And the purposes of that is to make all information known to all entities to have that. So CARB will be talking about that next. And then also we have EPA as one of our BACT SRC members, and we do talk with them regularly if that were to become an issue. Thank you. And as I did that, I see Bill Lamar raised his hand.
Yeah, I'd like to get this maybe straight in my mind. Let's say you have an air district like Santa Barbara, and they have somebody over there that they've permitted with a side draft spray booth. And for one reason or another, it happens to beat other side drafts or even downdraft spray booths that you all do. What's the process that another air district has to go through to reach out to you and or to the Air Resources Board for their technology database over there to get that up for review down here by this committee? And do you go through like a 6-month testing protocol with that permittee to make sure that you've got 6 months worth of data, so it's achieved in practice or whatever it is, 6 months or a year? I don't know what your air district does, or Mosen's the same way.
Yeah, I don't know if this is best discussed. I'm looking at staff in our second agenda item when we're going through the clearinghouse.
Yeah,
That'd be
I
more
can discuss
appropriate.
that, but very shortly, we have example, we use other air districts, the very short, how we did that is that we get the information, you're right, we kind of compile those information, but always we ask for the source test. We have the fumigation bromide. So we get the cost, not the cost data, or probably because we did a binary for that one was minor source. We got the cost data, we got the source results before we finalize our BACT determination. We didn't just, use what is already backed in the other air district to put it there. We do some due diligence to make sure that we have our supporting information, because for us is more stringent. But also I wanted to say that this is mostly about major source. So since this is major source, we are very specific when we fill the BACT determination form. So it is very clear that this is for this type of operation. For example, this is the size of the equipment. So whenever the permit engineers, they do their BACT determination, so they have they will do our evaluation process to make sure that this is transferable to their case.
Yeah, I understand that. My members, however, are small businesses by definition. So you're not going to get too many major sources from my constituents. But nevertheless, in the past, they have been hit with BACT or BART determinations. So they've had to make an investment in order to get their permit issued or reissued. So that's what I was trying to get clear in my mind. What is the step-by-step protocol that they have to go through to satisfy you folks?
Oh, okay, that one
Yeah.
goes to the next.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Next
And
slide.
It's in the coming slides.
Okay.
There are additional hurdles
Yeah, for the
we have to
minors.
go through in addition to this SRC for the non-major sources. So that are specific to South Coast.
Yeah, and thank you for your question. Again, let me then clarify for the rest of the folks and the public. This slide pretty much talking about major polluting facilities. This is the process when the facility is so big, is over the threshold for the major polluting facilities. And then, excuse me. So then after we got all of those comments on this specific type of facilities, then we will open it for the 30-day public comment period. And then we wanted to evaluate those comments before our final decision. And then we will provide a regular report to the station resource and the governing board. But when it goes to smaller facilities, or even if for major polluting facilities, because we can be more stringent than LAIR. So if there is a technology out there which is feasible and we can show it is cost effective for major source, we can still go through the process and requires that type of operation to be beyond LAIR. But again, this is for big facilities. When it comes to the smaller facilities, minor sources, so we need to follow the health and safety code requirement. So even if it is from other air districts, we will definitely need to look at the cost effectiveness of that type of process. And also like other type of BACT determination, we will want to make sure that we can see that this is achieved in practice. So it means that there are enough information, source tests, or SEMS data. For smaller source, maybe SEMS is not available. But assurance that this type of operation can be actually operated. And when we look at the background, at least should be 1 year of operation, consistent operation. And then the rest of the process after doing the cost evaluation, if it is cost effective, then it's very similar to the other case, 30-day public process, get the comment. But for the smaller facility, we also take it to the governing board for approval. So we have a hearing before we updating the BACT guidelines. So it is more involved.
Does your agency or do all,
Bill, can you speak into the microphone because our
Yeah, I'm
participants
sorry.
online can't hear?
do all 35 air districts use the same formula for establishing cost effectiveness?
By formula, if you mean about the cost threshold or the process?
I mean, cost effectiveness of a particular technology, this hypothetical spray booth that I'm talking about. When another air district signals you that they have, one of their permittees has a technology that beats current BACT. And that triggers, I guess, a series of steps that they should follow or have to follow, rather than just alert you. But in other words, cost effectiveness and emissions data that they have to accumulate from the facility owner. So that I'm assuming that doesn't happen instantaneously. That happens over a period of months, or maybe even a year before they make you aware of it, formally aware of it. Does that cost effectiveness analysis that you were referring to, does that originate at the air district, at the submitting or initial air district, or do you do that? And is it the same? Do you follow the same protocol, same formula?
For the basic of the cost, let's say, because when we do the cost effectiveness, we need to get the capital cost, annual cost, and installation shipment. So for those type of information, we will reach out to other air districts to get those information it depends on how confidential the data it is. So based on the information regarding the cost we get, we will start to do our own cost effectiveness evaluation because we have among the districts, the threshold could be a bit different because of the non-attainment status of each air district. So we are looking on our threshold to see that if it is more than that or less than that. But the process of doing it, we use I will discuss it later, what type of method we are using. But I know some of the districts, they use the same method. Some of them, they use a different method.
I can probably just
Yeah.
quickly answer Bill's question about the other districts, but for San Diego, we do have a different cost effectiveness figures in terms of dollars per ton. And
I
it's
figured you
usually
did.
posted on our website. In San Diego it is, but I'm pretty sure other districts have it. And it's correct that it's typically based on attainment status, but it's also based on the cost of various park rules that have been adopted at each district. And those are the kind of measures that used for determining cost effectiveness.
Yeah, and to add on to it, no district dictates how another district would implement their BACT, but rather we take the information they provided. They've gone through a permitting action. We
So-
take that information and put it through our own process.
So then in reality, this piece of technology that you're considering could be more or less cost effective in San Diego or in the district than it is in San Diego or Santa Barbara then, right?
I think it would just go through that respective district's
Uh-huh.
process.
Mhm.
So their threshold would be for their own locality.
I see. Okay. But nevertheless, people in permittees in your air district would be required to invest in that technology and use it. And it would be more or less cost effective depending on well, depending on actual, how it's used.
Yeah.
It's everyday use, whether it's sitting here in the city of industry or it's sitting in the city of San Diego or Santa Barbara.
But keep in mind, we look at that technology, all the costs involved, take that and evaluate it through our process and also bring it to this committee as well for comment.
Yeah.
So it'd be compared to our own cost effectiveness thresholds.
Yeah, I understand. But again, it may or may not be less attractive financially in one air district than it is in another air district.
Potentially, we just use the information as, through their permitting actions. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Russ.
And I think you have to distinguish if it's a layer determination for a major source, then cost is not going to be considered. It's across the board for all districts.
And layer is
Not-
constant, so.
Right.
Yeah.
For non-major sources, I think each district has their own value for cost effectiveness. The procedures are pretty close. I don't think they're very much different, but the actual dollar per ton is very.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill. All right.
Okay. So in addition to what we went through, I mean, the other processes for the two cases, we also have some requirements under the health and safety code that we need to follow in South Coast. So if we are going to change our BACT guidelines, specifically, let's say the procedure and implementation part of that, this also needs we need to hold a public hearing before approving anything or take it to the governing board. And also before establishing a BACT determination for the minor source. So we again need to go through some steps. So what we are doing is that we identify one or more potential BACT control alternatives, and then we will do the cost effectiveness, and also we will look at those technology to see if the similar cases or similar technology has been achieved in practice at least for 1 year as a commercial type of operation. And then after evaluating the cost effectiveness for each of those alternative technologies, which is kind of annual cost per ton of emission reduced, then we will compare them. And we do have an incremental cost threshold. So we will compare the two alternatives, the emission reduction and the difference in the cost, before deciding that which one is more cost effective and technologically feasible or applies to this type of operation. And eventually, after we finalized our determination and got approval from the board, we are also reporting this determination to CARB and EPA. And EPA has their centralized system to compile all of those information from all air districts. And there is where we are reporting our information to be more consistent and transparent for the future determinations and the permitting process. So it seems that there were a few questions regarding the cost, and that's what we expected. That's why we wanted to also have a few slides on the cost effectiveness and how we do our process and the basis for those thresholds. So as you know, cost effectiveness is one of the key factors in developing our air quality management plan, our BACT guidelines, as well as our BART in our adopted rules and regulations. So when we look at the cost effectiveness, there are some elements to that. We will walk you through them in the next slide. So our cost effectiveness, the one we are using right now, is, as said in Reg 13, is compared to the measures as listed in our air quality management plan and rules, or the control measures and the data from the adopted rules. So the benchmark for our control measures and cost data comes from our 1994 AQMP and the rules adopted in that time frame. And in the next slide, it is a little bit busy slide. I will make sure that I will go one by one through the graphs and tables. So I wanted to pretty much show you an overview of how we established our cost effectiveness in the past. Yes, Rita.
Yes, thank you. So just a quick follow-up to Bill's question. So I see that on the first bullet under the cost effectiveness, you have an asterisk and it says per health and safety code. So for non-major polluting facilities. So wouldn't that mean that it's standardized throughout the state, or does the health and safety code allow each air district to come up with its own cost effectiveness threshold?
In the health and safety code, it says that this is for South Coast. I'm not sure about other air districts, but for South Coast, we can revise our incremental cost effectiveness, but it needs to go to the board and the public process for approval.
Okay, so that health and safety code is specific to the South Coast.
This part is specific to the South Coast, yeah, but Bay Area and like San Joaquin or other districts, they have their separate parts. But the one that I mentioned, this section is specific to South Coast.
I see. Thank you for that clarification. And I don't know if it would be too difficult to do, but again, following up on Bill's question, at some point, could we get a breakdown, like a comparison district by district of what their cost effectiveness is?
Well, actually, we can provide that to the BACT SRC later, because when we did our cost, I don't have all of the districts, but we look at like Bay Area, Santa Barbara, San Joaquin, and I believe Sacramento, the ones that are kind of comparable, and San Diego. So these are the air districts we look when we have our evaluation of the cost data. So if it's something that helps, I can provide. But you know, the time frame could be a little bit different. Some of the air districts, they update their threshold annually. Some of them, like for us, we do it quarterly, but it still gives you some idea. They're most of them, they're close.
Okay, no, thank you. That'd be great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I know
Michael.
we'll see the numbers. I just want to confirm. When you say most of them are close, are you saying most of them are close when compared with each other or compared with South Coast thresholds?
I mean, I was talking about all of us, and it very depends also on the emissions, but in general, we are kind of close. But I mean, it depends close how many percentage we are talking about.
Okay.
You know, because when we go to our AQMP is very different. So, but I can provide those information to the committee,
Okay.
of course.
Go ahead and move on. I do see that a couple people added comments to the chat. We will visit those at the end of the slides.
Okay. Thank you for the comments and questions, very helpful. So on this slide, I wanted to pretty much show you what was the basis of our threshold when established this cost back in 1995 originally. So the slide or the graph on the left, it shows one of the examples. Actually, these are the PM emissions. So back in 1995, they look at the AQMP control measures and also the rule adopted, I guess, 5 years before that date time frame. And they compile all of those cost data for different type of operation. Let's say, for example, for NOx and VOC specifically for these two, it was a lot of data point. So they list all of those costs and they graph them in order of increase in the cost. So the one I picked to make it easy for myself to graph it is PM because the data point was much less. So as you see, there were like a few data points here, and then they graph them on the horizontal line. You see that it says adopted rules and control measures in cost order. So it starts from the low, and then goes all the way to the 14, I guess, $1,000 per ton. The yellow, or is triangle yellow graph. And then they look at the natural break to see that where are the outliers. So when they saw the natural break, so they came up with the threshold. And this has been reviewed with the BACT Scientific Review Committee in that time, and the public, we got a lot of comments, questions, and they look at the different methods and they decided to go with this way to establish the threshold. As I mentioned, for NOx and VOC, it was a lot of data points, so it was easier to see the consistent growth of the cost, and they were able to establish the same way, the natural break, to come up with the threshold. And then after that, every quarter, we use the Marshall and Swift index to update our cost data, and we report it on our website. So what you see on the right-hand side is our the most current update on the BACT threshold, which is the numbers are average and incremental cost dollars per ton, and the first column. And the second column is the 2022 AQMP dollars per ton. But as you may know, for example, for NOx is much higher because also they consider the health benefit of the cost when they look at the AQMP, which has a different requirement. And there is no other, other threshold for SOx, PM10, and CO in the AQMP. So there is one for VOC, it is 36,000, and then there is one for NOx.
Excuse me. I just want to make sure I understand. In presenting the AQMP cost effectiveness data, is the district suggesting that that is a threshold that will be applied to BACT in the future?
I'll go ahead and take that one because I was totally expecting this question and I was looking at you,
Set you
Carl,
up.
as she finished the slide. So we will be presenting something probably in the next SRC, recognizing there's been some great diversion for NOx that took on some new strategies for cost effectiveness. Right now, what we're going to move forward with is a BACT specific cost effectiveness study. This will take some time, but as you can tell, it was only for 2 contaminants. BACT looks at all 5, so it creates some disparity there. Plus the public health benefits got away from, the operational equipment focus of BACT. So we've been, and it's been brought up in past SRC meetings as well about this number. So what we're going to do is spend some time, but we're going to reinitiate a BACT focused cost effectiveness study for South Coast. But we'll be presenting that in the next SRC. We haven't started it yet. We're just going to be presenting the concept, but moving forward with it.
Alrighty, and this is the last slide about the cost effectiveness. We wanted to present some of the key elements when we do the cost effectiveness. What we are doing is that we need, answering your question, Bill, again, go back to, for example, minor sources. When we do the cost effectiveness, doesn't matter if it is in the South Coast or other air district, we are using those determination to list it on our guideline. We will look at the capital cost, and also we will looking on the annual operating costs. So each of them, they have multiple elements like a shipment, maintenance, utility. So we will look at all of those, and then we will use the real interest rate, which is 4% right now in the South Coast. And our default project or equipment life is 10 years, but it depends. It could vary, depends on some of the equipments. Some of them could be longer. And then we will look at the emission reduce using this type of control technology. And then we will compare the dollars per emission reduction per tons over this, let's say, for example, 10 years period. And then we will compare it with the threshold in the guideline to see if it is cost effective or not. And definitely it is different for different emissions. So VOC, as you said, NOx, CO, PM, they have different thresholds. And what the method we use is the discounted cash flow method. And pretty much we use the present value of all costs. We are adding the capital cost to the present value of the annual cost. And then we divide it over the length of the lifetime of the equipment, let's say 10 years, for example. Before I go to the next part, is there any question on this cost data? I have one more for the process.
This may be a good time to touch on some the chat questions. I'm going to go in reverse order just based on what they are. But question is, what is the maximum cost effectiveness for NOx? I believe we just presented that on the slide. And if the cost of a device exceeds the limit, does the client have to install the device? So if you're looking at non-major sources, If it is determined to not be cost effective, meaning the cost of, well, all these costs that we're showing on the current slide exceed that threshold, then we do not move forward with listing it for non-major source backed. Again, for our major sources, cost is not considered in this regard to this extent. So again, the short answer for non-major is no on that one. The other question in the chat is, this is more in regards to source testing. Is there a requirement to source test after the device has been installed and operated for 6 months to show that the device is still maintaining the same emission profile that was used to determine BACT? I would say that is case by case whether or not a source test is required. In some cases where there is source test and source test data, we will list that information as part of the BACT determination. So the permitting engineer knows what source test was done, what methodology was followed for information. That does not necessarily dictate that source test requirement follows for any future permitting action. That is something handled during the permitting process. There may be other circumstances where it's simply just a type of technologies that's described, use X widget on this type of process, which case that may not require a source test. Example that just came to mind as I said that is dry filters on a spray booth, 2 inches thick. That does not need to be source tested, but you do need to use that technology. So case by case. Thank you for the questions.
Jason, I have a follow-up question to yours. Can you, if you have a piece of equipment, whether it's a printing press, a litho press, flexo press, spray booth, or whatever it is, rather than go to the expense of a source test, can the permittee come to the district and see if a similar source test, recent source test already exists that applies to their particular piece of equipment?
So we do have certified equipment tests
Right.
for boilers, things like that. We're getting more into the permitting side, away from BACT, but I'll go ahead and answer this one. But for a litho where if it's just a standalone air dry litho, there would not be a source test involved.
Well, let's say it's got heaters on it.
Yeah, we would look at, well,
Got 8 or 10.
yeah, we would look at the coatings for, you get into heated, you have burners 1147, you have rule requirements for source testing that we need to adhere to. Also, if you get into the case, we have an allowance if you want to use higher VOC inks, coatings, and you add control equipment, you have to establish that it's equivalent, to the rule requirements. That would require a source test to make sure that it is collecting the VOC and then being destroyed to that, and that would have to periodically be done. So it really depends on the circumstances. If a
Well,
past test
in
can
the
be
case
used.
of a printing press, a litho, or different types of presses, yeah, you've got, I can't tell you how many, but you've got multiple print shops throughout your 4-county region that actually do the same type of work. So if you got into their individual operations, you'd find that many of them are really similar, and probably even have the same ink suppliers and other similarities in suppliers as well. So that's why I say if a source test exists within your agency from 1 or 2 printers or however many there are, but can that be used in lieu of the new permittee going to the expense of getting another source test, which is probably going to yield the same results?
Yeah. No one has approached us for the litho. Our certified program is typically initiated by the manufacturers. I would keep in mind if we did go through that, it would limit the degrees of freedom in terms of the permit you would receive on the other end, because they'd all have to be operated with the same parameters, same limits, everything that comes with it. Not saying it can't be done. We just haven't seen, that consistent operation, or of any manufacturers approached us to really evaluate that feasibility. Yeah, I'd say typically with the smaller ones, again, air dry, there's no source test. It's when you get into rule requirements that already require the source testing, we don't have that discretion in the permitting phase to bypass what's in our rules that are adopted by the board. All right, thank you, though. And again, this is the purpose of, this BACT, SRC meeting, to draw out this type of discussion so everyone understands. Yes, I see another question.
Regarding the project and equipment life, Bahare mentioned that you assume it's 10 years. Is that consistent across all technologies? Or if there's like a vendor that has a technology and they say it's good for 15 years, for example, like, do you use the 15 for that technology, or do you use 10 for everything just to have a consistent number of years to evaluate cost effectiveness?
It actually varies. Like one of the example, for example, we did last time was the carbon absorber, for example. That one, they said that we got, the manufacturer has a guarantee, and also the EPA references shows that 20 years is a reasonable time. So we use 20 years as life of the carbon absorber. So it could change based on the guarantee and the references we can get from the vendor. Yeah, this is the default value, the 10 years.
All right, we have two comments from John Chen. Thank you, John. I'll read the first one. Do other air districts actually have a cost effectiveness limit? It seems, for example, San Joaquin Valley APCD has a tier 4 requirement all the way down to 50 horsepower that more than doubles, sometimes triples the cost of generator, for example. That would suggest to me that there is no cost limit. I do not know offhand San Joaquin's cost effectiveness values. I can comment on ours right now for tier 4. We have tier 4 listed for certain horsepowers in South Coast for major sources. Again, cost is not much of a consideration for those. I will let you know that because of our cost effectiveness values in South Coast, our evaluation for non-major sources has shown that is not cost effective for our current values. So we always, again, do that assessment before we implement for our non-major. The second question from John is Bay Area AQMD is about to lower their horsepower limit down to 50 horsepower as well for tier 4 requirement for emergency standby units. Not a question, a statement, but I guess I'll carry that on. Again, we talk to other districts about this. We follow, these, but we look at it from both lenses of non-major and major sources. So we follow and track these. And as Bahari was saying earlier, we get the data, we evaluate it, we look at the limits, and then also bring them to this committee. Thank you, John.
One note. Oh, go ahead, Mas.
Just another quick note, it's Mosen with San Diego. I think maybe there is a little bit of confusion on what BACT is for different districts, because you're looking at cost effectiveness only here, but actually when BACT is triggered is in each district's new source review rule. South Coast has a 1 pound a day increase that triggers BACT. San Diego has 10 pounds a day increase that triggers BACT. So I think maybe that's what's maybe confusing people about what's required in one district versus another.
That is why we have other air districts on this committee as well. Thank you, Muslim.
And if I can, just to explain what that really means is though, even though Bay Area may have a BACT standard or may be considering a BACT standard for smaller engines, because of their applicability threshold, it may not actually be triggered for a specific pollutant, PM10, case in point. So just for other people listening, that's the practical implication and a significant difference when we talk about South Coast.
Yeah, exactly. And then to explain some of our new members, just the permitting process very briefly is they go through, calculate the emissions. For us, if it doesn't hit that 1 pound per day threshold, the BACT requirement is not triggered. We evaluate for it, but it's not triggered. We would put permit limits in there to ensure it doesn't exceed that, moving forward. But that's the distinction there between districts. All right.
Thanks for the informative presentation. I was curious, where do the cost effectiveness and analysis for BACT? Are you looking at this for a particular technology, like new technology, or you compare that with the existing technology regarding cost effectiveness?
A very good question. Actually, depends on the case, but we will look at both. Let's say, for example, there is a equipment, it is uncontrolled. So if they want to, like what Carl mentioned or Mohsen, if they trigger 1 pound per day, so they need to comply with BACT. So they need to have some kind of emission limit or control technology to reduce the emissions. So then when we were looking, it is uncontrolled versus adding a control device. And in that case, we will look at the average cost. If you notice, when I went through the table, on the right, it says average and incremental costs. So if this is uncontrolled versus control, so we will look at those threshold on the left, the lowest numbers, average ones. But let's say there are three alternatives, and we are going to compare different technology. Then what we are doing is that we will compare the emission reduction between each two, and then also we will compare their cost. So it's pretty much the dollars of the equipment per emission reduction. And for this case, since we are comparing two different technology, we will use the incremental threshold to see if it is cost effective between the two alternatives, which one is more cost effective. And we have a top-down analysis method. So we're starting with something which is more stringent, cleaner, and then we will see which one, and then we'll look at the cost. If one of them is not cost effective at all, we will take it out from the evaluation. And then whatever is left, different technology we have, we will go see which one is cleaner and it is more cost effective, or it is still cost effective. This is how we do that. Thank you.
All right. I think I'm going to move on. I know we have another presentation after this, and so I'll have public comment on this item.
Okay. So we already went over this update process, the role of BACT SRC, and our main goal here was really to be transparent and clarify that how we do this update process under the public review, and also getting advice from our experts in the scientific review committee. And as you see here is for example, for this round, this is how we are going to do it, and it's pretty much the same for each round. So we will hold back scientific review committee meetings depending on the type of the determination we are going to propose. Sometimes we may need to go more, and sometimes it doesn't need to go to that extent. It depends on the comments we receive. And after we provide after actually we address the comments and concerns, then we will take it to the Stationary Resource Committee. Our Stationary Resource Committee is the liaison between our BACT Scientific Review Committee and our governing board. So, and then we will take it to the governing board. So it depends. If it is like a layer determination, we are just reporting as a regular basis. But if it is, for example, for minor source cost is involved, then we need to get the approval in a hearing board, in the governing board, before we add it to the BACT guidelines. So this is pretty much the process we go through to make sure everything is transparent and we are coming up with a solid BACT determination eventually that the facilities, they can meet those emission limits to achieve our, the reduction in emission in our district. So by that, I don't have anything more to add here. Pretty much it concludes my presentation. So are you going to open for another?
Yeah, let me pause there. Do we have any other comments from our committee members before I open it up to public? Rhonda, go
Thank you,
ahead.
Bahare. That was really nice. Appreciate it. I do want to take just one step back, please, to the layer adoption process. You did touch on it on slide 18. You talked about the technology shall be, achieved in practice for a minimum of 1 year, right? Can you just clarify how that year is determined? I mean, you have technologies that potentially could be seasonally operated and not continuously. Is it 1 year? Is it 12 months? Is it 87, 60 hours? Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Thank you.
In general, it is like a continuous operation, but for those cases that they are not like the one you mentioned, seasonal, so we usually look at the type of operations, similar cases, and we want to make sure we have enough information. It is really case by cases. For example, we have the tomato paste facility, it was seasonal, so we look at more, extent of the data to make sure it is operational. We did just look at the small or like an IC engine, they are just emergency. When we look at those kind of situations, we want to have enough data point before we propose it to the public as a BACT determination.
All right, seeing no other questions, let me check our members online. All right, let me open it up to public comment. Does any of our attending public have any questions either on Zoom or in the room? I do not see any hands raised. Okay, I think Barry has one more. Did you have one more comment or? Oh, okay.
Sorry, mention about the email up there. So please, if you have any comments, questions, email it to BACT team at AQMD. Also, Bettina and my emails are in the next slides. But if it is related to the comments on the BACT guidelines or determination, it would be helpful if you put the BACT docket on the subject, so we know that it is specific to this guideline process. Then we will post it on the webpage. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is that for those of you want to get any notification about our guidelines, we don't say too much. Usually is if we have a BACT SRC, so we send a notice to the public, or like for the emergency engine, for example, when we publish the first one and then when we revise it the second time, we send it to the interested parties. So if you're interested, please signing on this page. There is a link up there. And in general, if you have any questions, please feel free to call Bettina or contact us and me on this email address or phone numbers. Thank you.
All right, I do see one hand raised. Since we are still presenting, I'll open up public comment again. John Chen, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, John, go ahead.
Hi. Okay, great. On the cost effective ratio, I just had a question about when you're looking at, for example, moving like tier 4 to lower horsepower for non-major facilities. Are you considering the highest cost solutions or the lowest cost solutions, and also looking at if the different solutions have different applications that they're allowed for by code? That makes sense.
First of all, hi, John.
Hi, Rory.
You're always very helpful. I really want to thank you, during the development of that guideline, you, Carl, and few of our members, they really help us. So regarding your question, it depends, for example, if you are going from tier 2 to tier 4, and it is just adding a DPF, for instance, to reduce the PM emission, that would be goes to the incremental cost effectiveness. But if it is like an engine, which I'm not sure if emergency engine, they don't have any control except we go back to tier 0, tier 1 maybe. But if it is, let's say, between tier 2 and tier 4, since it needs some sort of after treatment, I believe, but correct me. you're expert on that. Then we will look at the incremental cost. But again, I mean, some engines, they do the retrofit. So when they do the retrofit, then we have to look at the uncontrolled versus control, which would be the lowest cost. So it is kind of case by case.
Okay. So like a lot of the other air districts in North California are moving to Tier 4 for the non-major facilities, and they're just kind of doing it across the blanket. So it makes me feel like there is no cost limit for them. They're just, blankly saying everything over 50 horsepower for emergency standby has to go to Tier 4. And that doubles and triples the cost of some of the smaller generators. And there are like Tier 4 certified gensets, right? But they are not allowed to be used in some emergency applications for life safety loads because they have inducement shutdowns, right? So when you're looking at cost effectiveness, some of the Tier 4 certified equipment and lower horsepower can be a lot cheaper than the compliant solutions.
That's true. This is not, I cannot say I'm 100% sure, but as I recall, I believe some of the air districts, they are not like South Coast. I mean, they don't have distinction between major and minor, and probably Santa Barbara, and I mean, David and Mustang can help me here. So as I know, I believe this for San Joaquin, as I know, they don't have distinction between major and minor source. So they are not like us to require to go through the health and safety code requirements specifically for cost effectiveness when it goes to minor source facility, because for them pretty much is the same whole.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Point out, there's other districts who aren't represented here. We happen to have some air districts here, but I don't think we have Bay Area or San Joaquin here, but definitely reach out to them. We're just here to, yes, all the S air districts, but except for Shasta. Yeah, I would definitely reach out to them about their questions. There's different circumstances on how they come up with these
David, do you have
determinations.
some?
Yeah, thanks. David with Santa Barbara. I just wanted to chime in and say that, yeah, Bahare is correct. For Santa Barbara, we do not differentiate between major and minor source for BACT. So when we're doing BACT determinations for minor sources as well, if it's achieved in practice, we don't look at cost effectiveness. So that's where we're getting a lot of the Tier 4 final requirements for emergency standby generators as achieved in practice without doing a cost effectiveness analysis.
Thank you.
And I see one more public comment in our chat that I'll read before we move on. Due to the uniqueness of many devices, and also before I read this too, I'm going to close the queue so we can move on. So this will be the last comment. Due to the uniqueness of many devices where there may be only one device with unique characteristics, a BACT for a certain category may not be applicable to unique devices. What are the options? I think I'll ask or answer this maybe in generality. We didn't cover this, but there is a top-down BACT process. I think if we're running into unique circumstances where we walk through the whole cost effectiveness, available technologies, this is part of the BACT guidelines, and maybe we'll discuss that in a future SRC meeting on how we handle that in the interest of moving on. But thank you for your question. Mohsen?
Yeah, one last comment before we go to ARB. It's something you can address maybe at the end of the meeting, but I just wanted to get a read from South Coast about the status of Senate Bill 318 by Josh Becker that was proposing to revise what's called the California Clean Air Act Permit Modernization Act, but it was supposed to change the definitions for achieved in practice and alternative technology to include power generation, or electricity. But I heard that they withdraw the indirect source control portion of it yesterday, but I don't know if the part about BACT and BARC's still there or not. If you know, let us know.
I can
If
only
not,
answer in general because I only heard last update a couple of weeks ago that I'll just say hit some challenges. So I'm not sure on the current state of that proposed legislation. All right, with that, let's move on. We do have a presentation for AB 617 Technology Clearinghouse Update. And Air Resources Engineer Paul Moranian is going to be presenting this, and he's with the California Air Resources Board. If we can switch presentations. Oh, I'm sorry. This is, it's all one slide deck. If we can move forward to. All right, Paul, are you there?
Thanks. Yes, I'm here. It's not letting me turn on my camera, so do I need my camera on? Doesn't need to see my face.
We apologize for that. I don't think we have control of your camera here, but why don't we move on and
Yeah, no worries.
all right.
Okay, hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Paul Moranian with the engineer here in the Office of Community Air Protection at the California Air Resources Board. Thanks for letting me take some time and share our development progress with the Technology Clearinghouse. Next slide. Just give you some background on the Technology Clearinghouse. So in 2017, California adopted the 8617 to address the cumulative exposure burden experienced by disadvantaged communities and focus on non-vehicular, non-mobile sources, giving proper attention to reduce exposure from stationary sources. The blueprints adopted September 2018 and updated to a blueprint 2.0, October 2023, serves as CARB's statewide strategy, translating the foundational legislative directives into like implementation guidance. So a piece of putting that into action, we developed the Technology Clearinghouse with the goal to provide transparent access of accurate, useful information to the public through a user-friendly system. So we're trying to make the Technology Clearinghouse something that helps community members, emission sources, control technology manufacturers, and regulators all understand what can be done with within that emission space. Next slide. When we were looking at designing the Technology Clearinghouse, we designed it for 4 main user groups. And as you can see from the slides, public, government, technology users, and manufacturers. So when we envision the public using this, it'd be our communities, academia, just the general public, they'd be able to come to this system and just view the data that's been entered into the Technology Clearinghouse and see any visualizations that we developed and get any support, user guides, learn a little bit more about emissions. And then when it came to governments, they would have access to pretty much any information that was entered either by themselves or by other agencies across the state. And sometimes when it comes to next generation technology, it would be even across the globe. And technology users, if say someone wants to let other people know, like we are using this really cool zero emission technology, they can be able to come in here and input some data to let people know that. And the manufacturers will be able to see data regarding what is currently out there, if there's a market for something, and just things like that. So speaking of that, next slide. We developed the Technology Clearinghouse based on like 4 different modules. One, being able to take in best available control technology data and display that data. Another one, basically all the rules for the air districts, taking it in, displaying it. Next generation technology, basically anything that goes beyond what's currently required. We want to be able to take that in from various sources and then make that transparent to all other users. And then we have that support I'd mentioned. Users can just come in and either learn more about emissions or learn more about our system, things like that. Next slide. Here, I just want to provide you with a kind of an example. This is the Technology Clearinghouse. It's in a beta stage right now. This is the landing page. So when a user navigates to our Technology Clearinghouse, they'll see this screenshot here on the left where you have like the option to learn, discover, explore, again, that goes back to what we offer the user, whether you're a community member, a manufacturer, or a regulatory government agency. These three different sections offer different functionalities to learn about the technology clearinghouse, the permitting process, any other clean air technology, discover about what data we have within the technology clearinghouse, search it, see what visualizations we have, and then explore, which is, again, looking through each individual module, the best available control technology rules or next gen to see what is out there. Also, as a user, you'll be able to come into here, and there's three different user input sections where you can ask a question, report any issue that you are experiencing with the system. And also, this is a feature when we did have a prototype regarding next gen technology. If you wanted to either request data that you don't quite see in the system, or request some type of technology review of a various source, you'd be able to insert or put in that request from that point. As you see, also in Learn, we've collaborated to put out, those videos with just learning about the air quality fundamentals. So that's like various links that we'll be having Learn. Next slide. So as a public user, you'd be able to go to that landing page. But as basically an authorized user, someone who's registered for an account, someone who has a need to input data into the system, you'd be able to, again, you'd have a login password and go into the authorized user screens for data entry or viewing data. So once you're an authorized user, you have a dashboard, left-hand nav to various modules, whatever you need, whether or not you're a next-gen data submitter or a air district BACT submitter, air district rule submitter, or someone internal to farm. This would be things that you'd be able to see. So you have the user dashboard where you see information pertaining to your account or the data you've entered. There is a functionality where you can manage users within your own organization. If you're a data submitter, you would be able to go through a whole data entry process. So what we have here is a screenshot of the data entry process is a BACT, where there's a navigation wizard. You might be familiar with this from like other applications with taxes. Just walks you through different screens, step by step, what data each screen is looking for, and then how far along you are in the process. You'll be able to navigate back and forth to each individual screen to enter that data. And then if you're just looking at the data, here's that screenshot, the data view of a BACT data entry, where if it has location information, it'll show it on a map, and then the various attributes according to that data. So for this BACT, different tabs, different information pertaining to that tab, things like that. And then next slide. So that is where we currently are with the technology clearinghouse. We have some beta users out there that are currently entering data, providing some feedback. There's, with everything that's being released, there's always some things happening with the system that could be improved before our final release to the public. And our final release, we are looking at early fall for all the clearinghouse user groups that I've mentioned have access and to be able to enter data. During this time between now where we're finishing up development, getting into additional testing, and then releasing that out to beta users. From that time, we'll begin outreach, training, putting out different user guides, videos. And then looking forward to more just additional assessments and next-gen technologies, vendors and manufacturers to be entering their data. And that is everything I have.
All right, thank you very much, Paul, for that information. Thank you for the continued collaboration on all things backed in this clearinghouse. But let me open it up to our SRC members. I see one question. Rita, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Paul. And I actually presented to a national audience of manufacturers and businesses not too long ago, and the CARB clearinghouse was on one of my slides because I think it's a really good resource. So kudos to CARB for that. I had a question on the next steps and the work on outreach and assessment. Does CARB have any formalized process for doing that, similar to the BACT SRC committee, where you convene manufacturers, business people, academia, or is this more of an informal process to provide input on the clearinghouse? Thank you.
It was more of an informal process. We didn't have we didn't have a public workshop in that regard. We did collaborate with the air districts. There were a few manufacturers that we had worked with previously in obtaining next generation technology. But in regards to just the data flow of the data entry, the various users that we had seen using those workflows, we had contacted them and worked with them to understand how they would be using the system. When it comes to the actual public community, non-authenticated users that don't necessarily do data entry, we're still in developing those public based like those streams, and we haven't developed a formal process of who we would be like reaching out at the moment. But that is part of the next steps. As soon as we have those streams implemented in the system.
Thank you, Rita. Next question from Carl Laney. Go.
Hi, thank you. My question has to do with process also. My assumption in the clearinghouse was always that the local agencies would take the initiative to feed information to CARB, rather than CARB scouring information to decide what to input. Is that truly the case? Will a local air district, for example, be the entity that would initiate this because they truly think something could be considered current best technology, or would CARB be looking independently?
As in regarding the BACT determinations and rules, I believe we're trying to build a system that allowed the air districts to report that, because they're already reporting that information to CARB, such as the determinations and the rules, before anything is able to be published into the clearinghouse, made available to the public. So we're trying to make that process easier for the air districts, so that they would be entering that data. When it comes to next generation technology, I know South Coast has that other technologies section 3 within their BACT, where they do list other things. We wanted to make it available to basically everyone with interest to enter next generation technology that's not necessarily BACT at the moment, but has potential.
Thank you.
Bill, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Paul, this is Bill Lamar with the Small Business Alliance. With respect to your website, if I'm looking for a particular technology and I have some questions that fall under the category of proprietary information, how do you handle that on your website? Do you provide some contact information from the vendor or the manufacturer, or am I left to my own devices to either do without or to find that out, contact the vendor myself?
We provide, so basically, if it's whoever enters the information regarding the next gen technology, we do have this disclaimer that basically anything they are entering into the system can be made public. So it'd be on whoever is entering the data, whether or not they would want that data to be made eventually public. We do require them to say who the manufacturer is, what model is it, so that you would have some type of information to go work forward on and doing further research on that technology.
So they sign a release? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Not really. They don't sign. There's like a checkbox in the system, like when you become a registered user, it's basically the disclaimers of what you're entering into the system, what can be made confidential.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so any confidential information that the manufacturer or anyone doesn't want to provide in the system, because we don't have a requirement at this moment to actually provide next-gen technology information. If they say something is proprietary, they probably wouldn't provide it to us. So it would be, you want to contact the manufacturer.
All right. Rhonda, go ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Rhonda with Orange County Sanitation District. I have a question, logistics actually. If a user were to go in and create a beta user account, is that going to carry over into the live app once that goes live, or do we create a new account at that moment? Can you just clarify that? Thank you.
So yes, so right now the beta is pretty much the production environment. So we've only reached out to a select amount of users that are pertaining to the features that we've already released. So any data that is being put into that system is live data. We have an internal environment where we first test, which is user acceptance testing, where we just verify all the functionality is in there before it gets pushed to this live system. That is a system that does not actually, it's not going to carry, it has all the test data where it's just, kind of garbage, but that's just part of the software development process.
Thank you.
All right, looking around the table online, I don't see any more SRC questions. Let me open up to public comment for this item. All right, first hand I see is Bill Quinn. Welcome, Bill. Go ahead.
Thank you. Bill Quinn with CEB, California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance. So when you get this up and operating, Paul, thank you for your presentation. How do you see somebody from the regulated community using your tool versus going directly to their air district? What would be, so you want to find out what is back for this technology that you're going to try and install. What would be the process you would use? Would you go to the air district or would you go to your clearinghouse? And if you go to the air district, what benefit would you have by going also to the clearinghouse? Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. Because when we designed the system, I wish we'd had before we made these slides some of the public facing screens that I'd be able to show you. The idea is the regulated community or just community members in general, if they had a source of interest, they would come to the technology clearinghouse. They would search for this source that they're interested in, and the public screen, this visualization that we would provide, would give you the rules that are associated with that. So you can see what is currently what current rules impact that emission source. You would be able to see if there's any back determinations associated with that source of interest. And then you'd see if there's any next generation technology that can apply to that source. Again, we do have a prototype which kind of has that data in different modules. So I know air districts and internal CARB agency use that. There's a rules tool that you can search for something and see where that source may be within a certain rule. You can filter that by different air districts. And then we have a current back determinations rule where you can search for something and you can see whatever back determinations may apply to that. And there didn't have any type of thing that's really connecting those three, well, including the next gen technology module. We didn't have anything that's really connecting all those. You'd have to kind of go through each individual prototype to connect those. But that's what we're trying to kind of guide the regulated community, like what can you apply here at this source of interest? And what potential reduction technology can you have there, either instead or as you build something new? Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you for that question, Bill. I do not see any more public comment in the, oh, we have one in person. I'll hand off my microphone.
Thank you. Rich Nichols, I'm with RA Nichols Engineering. So is it incumbent on the manufacturer to present the technology to be reviewed, or how does the whole process start?
Yeah, so as a technology manufacturer, you would come to our landing page, you would request a user, register a user. Basically, there's a question about, why do you want to become an authenticated user? You'd say, I'm a technology manufacturer and I would love to have my data entered into the next generation technology module, something like that. We would look at your email address, like, oh yeah, this seems like a business. We'll try to take a look at this to make sure there's not, there's a bunch of users just trying to. We'll do some quality checks. I'm trying to say that. And then you'll be an approved user, and then you'll have access to enter next generation technology. And at that point, we have a few fields where we're basically asking you, what technology do you have? What technology do you have, would you say exists? And then we would ask you, how is this technology in regards to it being like real? Like, has this technology been installed anywhere? So there's like two sections just telling us, you tell us about your technology, and another section is just tell us about where have you used the technology or have sold this technology, installed this technology, so that we can actually visualize that information to let people know, like, yes, this technology is out there and this is how real it is.
So then do you pass it on to the South Coast Air Quality District, and then they'll analyze it for BACT or layer?
We're hoping that this next generation technology would just make technologies that are beyond what is currently required just more transparent. Because right now, there could be a lot of manufacturers that are developing technology that are controlling sources that we just don't know about. I know there's like various lists out there that are for various sources that something may exist. And right now, it's possible that regulators aren't aware of them. So this is what we're trying to put out there.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And I'll add to that. I'm a permitting engineer working on a project. I want to see what technologies are out there for a certain piece of equipment I'm permitting. This is a reference guide to see what's out there, what's possible. I think I talked about that top-down process, other things that are clean. It would still have to go through our process for what we determine to be backed. But again, this is a reference for us to access for different technologies is what CARB's doing. All right. Thank you very much. I think we had one more question at the table. Well, a couple more. So Carl, and then we'll go down the line.
I like the concept of having access to information about next generation technologies. I'm a little bit concerned about the diversity of the people who would be using the website, technocrats versus the general public. And I just want to understand what kind of guardrails or caveats is CART placing on this discussion of next generation technology. You know, just as an example, a person responding to a project in CEQA, for example, is not necessarily a technocrat. They see something on CARB's website and they assume that that's a blessing. They debate the technology, but they're not debating it with technical experts. They're debating it with politicians when a project's being approved for land use permitting. So it puts the rest of the parties in the process in a defensive position. Not that anyone minds being in a defensive position as professionals, but how do you keep from giving the wrong signal that you have actually vetted the technologies and actually have identified or agree when the technology is or is not useful? And if you can't go through that vetting process, which I can't expect you to do, I don't think that's reasonable, but something has to be in place on the next gen pages to clarify to the public, the layman, that this is not an endorsement of technology. It's not a review of the technology. It's simply a listing of possibilities. And I think it's also important to make sure that this doesn't devolve from a technical clearinghouse into an advertising campaign by manufacturers.
Yes, right, that I would agree. Language on there regarding this is whatever we have in there is not an endorsement of the technology is making things more transparent and increasing awareness of the technology, which is some of the questions that we asked for in the data entry regarding the next gen technology and submission, just trying to help the user determine whether or not that technology is real. So a manufacturer wants to come in and give us all the information that we are asking for or just required. That would help them make their technology known to the user that's viewing the information, know whether it's real. So we do ask, just the general attributes of the equipment, and then application wise, like any industry or what the manufacturer sees this technology replacing, application or use cases that it's been applied to. And then that's where we also go into installations. Where has this technology actually been installed? And what phase of development is that technology in when it was installed? Is it a prototype, a demonstration, pilot program? Is this commercially available? How many of these have been installed? And then again, what application has this been installed in? So hopefully with that data making that visible, a user that does come in here would be able to understand, well, this manufacturer only listed their make and model, doesn't show any other attributes of where it's been applied or where it's been installed. It may not actually be something worth, or this may be something just way off in the future. Whereas some manufacturer that's actually listed all this application information shows they've installed it across the state with over 100 installations, that technology may be something you want to look into. So hopefully with that information and us saying we're not really endorsing, but trying to make it transparent, it would help the user move forward and doing their own research in that one particular technology.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I don't know if we had any other questions. for Paul.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Paul. This is Jachen from USC, and I work at CAR before coming back to USC. I actually have a similar or down the same line question with Carl's question. So for how do you envision the general public, especially like community members, to use this technology clearinghouse? And given that there are also other like mapping tools provided by CARB regarding their emissions, so what's your thoughts, like, or have you talked with community members since this is part of the AB 617 initiative regarding how they would like to use this website for?
So another piece of this that is going to be where to the public is, the AB 617 community members is we have the actions module as part of the support where we can list community actions, something that has a tool the CARB currently has deployed, the Community Hub 2.0, where it lists those plans. But yeah, again, regarding that community member coming into our system, say they are concerned about a particular source. I know there was there was a community that mentioned they had an interest in reducing emissions for, say, the commercial cooking. So here they would come to the technology clearinghouse, they would search commercial cooking, they would see any rules that are associated with it. And if any rules have been associated with commercial cooking within their air district, they'd say, oh, there is none. But not in my district, but in other districts, they'll see like, oh, something on chain-driven charbroiling has been done. Why hasn't that been done here? And they can start developing their own plan going forward of reaching out or seeing what their district did with their rule to implement that into, what their current air district is. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Another question from Bill. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bill Lamar again with the Small Business Alliance. I can give you a good example of that. The district has two rules right now that are coming up this Friday to the governing board, Rule 1111 and 1121, regulating water heaters and furnaces. And there are two camps. The environmental community, the general public, pretty much adamantly opposed to any alternatives other than electric, and the business community favoring the district's compromise for either electric and or gas technologies as being acceptable. And if anybody had participated in any of the workshops or public hearings, they would have seen this clash here between the two. I don't know if there's a lawsuit pending or not after Friday, but nevertheless, there's going to be half the camp is going to be feel that they're disenfranchised because they're not going to get the emissions that they had originally thought that they were going to get from these two. So I don't know. I foresee people who are going to invest in natural gas as long as they can, simply because of the costs involved in using all electric, the heat pump process. And that's certainly, I think, could certainly be challenged, maybe at the CARB level, but certainly here at the district level as well. So I don't know if your clearinghouse has included or will include furnaces and heaters, I think under 6,000 BTU, if I'm not mistaken, in your among your technologies or not. But that's certainly could be a point of contention by a lot of people here, and certainly in the in the regions that South Coast regulates in the 4 counties.
I want to touch on that, Paul, before you address that, because I do want to reset with purview of this committee is for BACT, and BACT is for permitted sources. The rule you're discussing does not hit permitted units. So I do want to set that up before I hand it over to Paul
Well,
to answer.
certainly the residential are not. You've got thousands of non-permitted or unpermitted units, but those that are in a number of small businesses, and I know this. Dan McGivney, who used to be with the gas company, he would contact me regularly, where he would have a customer that had a question or refer me to a particular customer. And I would talk to them about this and other technologies, but this is those units that are in small shops, dry cleaners, restaurants, small manufacturing shops. They are permitted.
Rule 11.11.11.21 does not require permits.
No,
Small units,
I know they don't require them, but they are. If they're located in a business.
Yeah, 1146.2, which is larger units, would require a permit or a registration.
Yeah,
These 11.11.11.21 units do not require permits, and therefore would not come into the BACT discussion because BACT is evaluated during the permitting process.
So if they're under the 1146 threshold and 1146.1 threshold, then they're exempt from permits. If they're located in a business.
These, yes, they qualify for Rule 219 permit exemptions.
Okay.
So the rule still applies to them, but they do not get drawn into our permitting process.
219 or 222, do they have to be registered?
They do not have to be registered currently.
They don't.
222 is our registration.
Right.
They are permit exempt. If they were, I would have a lot more gray hair right now, if any hair at all. So they do not come into our permitting universe.
Okay, thank you.
Before we turn it over to Carb, can you clarify which 219 exemption that is for the
There's
heaters?
an exemption for less than 2 million BTU. There's also exemptions for residential facilities as well, but all of these are smaller.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll follow up with you on that because I'm aware of the 2 million BTU. But I don't know if there's a distinction. I thought it was applicable to boilers specifically, but I could be wrong.
Combustion units.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Paul, I don't know if you could briefly address the question on if these units are in the clearinghouse?
Not currently. We don't have anything with water heaters, like residential wise. That's what that was. I'm not familiar with the rule at the moment, but functionally the system, we're able to accept technology like that, again, as well as accept requests for reviewing different technology types. I know we had done something previously regarding residential appliances, but this was like quite a few years ago. There was just a tool that kind of just showed various emissions from these appliances if you were using natural gas or switching to electricity, but the numbers there might be a little old. But again, the functionality of the system would allow it to happen, and based on interest and requests, what technology would go into the system, there's nothing stopping from us visualizing that data. The whole goal is transparency, so that's what we want to do.
All right, thank you, Paul. See any more questions? Let me open it up for public comment one more time at the end of discussion. Anyone or attendees or on Zoom wish to comment? And I am not seeing anyone, so Do want to thank all our SRC members of the public that came out today, and those that are attending on Zoom. We don't have a meeting date yet for the next SRC meeting, but we are working on some determinations that we'll get out to you before we have that meeting. But thank you again. Really appreciate the discussion, and I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you. We can stop the webcast. Zoom.